At this time, call the February 17th, 2025 County Council meeting to order. I want to welcome all of you here tonight for our meeting. Our first item is to recognize the Honorable Bumparati for Pledge Allegiance and Invocation.
We standing? Well, I want to start off by saying happy birthday to our Madam Chair. I'm not going to embarrass you by having everybody sing happy birthday. We'll save that for later. We'll do it in the back. But today is her birthday, and we're so honored to have you as our chairperson. You do a great job for us, and we wish you well on your birthday and many, many more.
Thank you, Mom.
All right. We'll give a round of applause. All right, let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for life, health, and strength. We ask that you continue to watch over us, lead us, and guide us. We ask that you continue to bless our sheriff, our firemen, our servicemen, and our military men and women. We ask that you keep them safe from all hurt, harm, and danger, and make sure they have a safe return home each and every day. We ask that you watch over us tonight as we deliberate the people's business, lead us and guide us, that we make the best and most wise decision that you will have us make. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. One of the exciting things that we get to do as a council is that when new folks are appointed to a board or commission, and we have many of them, I think 30 boards and commissions that exist throughout the county, we simply can't do the work that needs to be done for all the citizens without having very much participation from our community on these boards and commissions. And so our first item is going to be to ask for folks who are here to be sworn into office for their positions that they have been appointed to on the boards and commissions. I apologize in advance if I get your name wrong. I'm doing the best I can. We have Indira Esquivia, Porter Gable, Hiram Hutchison, David Angel, Shay Maple, and Lamar Thompson, all who are being appointed to the Rock Hill Board of Convention and Visitors Bureau. If you'll come forward for Districts 1, 3, 5, 6, and 2 at-large seats, we have Dawn Posey and Jennifer McAdams for York County Forever, District 1 and ex officio respectively, and Flint Holbrook Stormwater Appeals Board. And as you make your way forward, our county attorney is going to meet you in the front and administer the oath of office. On behalf of council, we say thank you for giving up your time and doing it without any payment. And a lot of times you don't get any thanks, but we do want to say thank you for the hard work that you'll be doing for our community.
I do solemnly swear that I'm duly qualified according to the Constitution of this state
to exercise the duties of the office
to exercise the duties of the office
to which I've been appointed.
to which I've been appointed,
And I will, to the best of my ability,
and I will, to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
preserve, protect, and defend
and preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of this state,
the Constitution of this state
of the United States.
and of the United States. So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chip. I would have said Chip if I'd have looked at it before I was looking through there. It's good to see y'all. Yeah, thank you. We do have a special appearance tonight, and I'm going to recognize and ask that Tamara Hogg and Sheriff Breeden come forward. We want to recognize Lisa Love Salinas on her service and retirement with the York County Sheriff's Department.
And as she's making her way to the podium, I like to make sure I send a big wave and shout out to my classmate. I don't get to see my classmate too often, but we grew up one street over from each other. It's always good to see you.
Well, as I represent the York County Detention Center, I just want to thank you for your 17 years of service. You have been a beacon of hope to so many. You came in through the days that we really struggled. It was rough inside of those housing units. but to actually see you on a daily basis smile, laugh, crack a little joke, you were firm, you were fair, you were consistent. Not only did you love the officers, you really loved and cared about the inmates. There were times that they can come to you and talk about some of their problems, and it would seem as if their darkest day would have just that glimmer of hope to say, you know what, I don't have to act the way that I act. I can be a better person. So we thank you for making a difference at York County. We thank you for your consistency, your dedication. I can't think of nobody in York County who has worked as much overtime as you have. You allowed a lot of people some time off when we were shorthanded because you stepped up and represented. So we thank you. We appreciate you. You have placed a stamp, love, love, inside of that facility, and we'll never forget it. Thank you.
I don't think the average person really understands how hard it is to work inside the jail. Really don't. And especially when because I've done them both, the road and the jail. And the person it takes to make it 18 years and then also still love what they're doing and leave for good reasons to do better things is really rare in that job. And this is the second time I've been over for somebody retiring. They're saying it's not because of me. I guess I'll believe it. But, so, no, I just want to thank you again. And we had her little retirement thing over at the detention center a little while ago, and you'd be blown away how many people in their own time came down there to spend some time with her and thank her. And that's a real testament to who somebody was for so many people to come wish them well and say some people leave and there's one or two people there. That wasn't the case. So, I'm just somebody that's personally grateful for all you've done, and the county's grateful too, because it is one of the most important things we have. Keeping our people safe and them safe is a monumental task, and we're appreciative. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. We really do. Thank you so much. Get your box.
Thank you. Lisa, on behalf of the council, we want to say thank you for your service to the community. I think they've said it best when they say you've done a very difficult job for a very long time, and our community is much better for the work that you've done. We certainly wish you the best in your retirement. We hope you're doing something fun, something exciting. The podium is yours if there's something you want to say back to the rest of us.
Well, I wasn't expecting to speak, but okay. Like Sheriff Breeden just said, we just left my party, my little pop-in at the detention center, and it was just such a joy to say goodbye, to all these wonderful people that I've had the pleasure of working with in the past 18 years. And like he also said, a lot of our people in our community don't realize, you see the road officers, but you don't see us, But without both of us, the community wouldn't, stay safe. So it's stressful, but so worth it, to treat people with dignity and like human beings, because we've all made mistakes, y'all. There's no one perfect in this room. So I felt like God called me. I left teaching at a high school in Chester to take on this career, and I felt like God called me there because I must have been needed more there than where I was, because I think in my line of work we need more officers who can show that compassion and that empathy and be sometimes that ear to listen to, and I'm not the only officer there, obviously, from my leadership, down to the housing unit officer. Everybody that I know that works there shows that type of empathy and dedication, and definitely the overtime. But it's been a joy. I am going to be playing with flowers and gardening. I have a little flower shop, so I get to follow my passion now. But it's been wonderful. I've loved every minute of the 18 years I've spent serving the community, and thank you so much. I appreciate y'all acknowledging my hard work.
Thank you so much for those powerful words, and if you don't mind, we would like to have one picture with the council as well, because I think this is one of those jobs that we all need to make sure we be consistent when we're doing these pictures in front of council.
Thank you.
If you don't mind coming forward.
Absolutely. You want me to come up there?
Yep, if you'll. Yeah, just stand, yep, it's a little awkward, but. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
No, we don't.
All right.
Never seen him.
You're fine, I got it.
Thank you for your 18 years.
We move now to our public forum session of our agenda tonight, and it doesn't look like anyone has put anything. There is one. There's only 6 individuals who've signed up. When I call your name, if you'll please come forward and give your name and address. We do set aside this time for folks to talk to us. It's not a chance for us to answer questions. It's merely a time for our community to speak without us interrupting you and to give your comments. If you'll keep your comments to something that's germane to the council, and make sure that you keep your comments polite. Don't call out individuals individually or call names, because they don't have the ability to respond back. And I will say that there's an item on here, I say this with all of these that fall into this category, there's an item here that's SILFAP. I want to reiterate that matter is currently within the court system and is being determined by a judge. It's not a council issue. So I will start with the first individual, Natalia Mitchell.
Happy birthday, by the way. Natalia
Thank you.
Mitchell, 965 Bradle Path, Fort Mill. So I want to address the necessary rezoning of Onibeni North America's proposed facility in Fort Mill today. This project is clearly a case of light industrial use, as discussed in the last council meeting on February 3rd. The community seeks to protect light industrial districts and ensure they remain light industrial. Heavy industrial uses can never sneak their way indirectly to our schools and homes. We welcome Onibeni, but urge them to keep the property light industrial. Onibeni's facility aligns with existing zoning. The Planning and Zoning Department should have directed Onibeni to the BZA, which interprets zoning law. Skipping this step has caused unnecessary complications. BZA is a public process to ensure proper zoning interpretations while balancing property rights and community concerns. Why did the Planning and Zoning Department not inform Onibeni about this required step? Avoiding BZA raises questions, especially after issues with SILFAP. This needs to stop, or businesses will avoid our community. One councilman noted that rezoning with restrictions could hurt Onibeni's property value. Instead of unnecessary rezoning with deed restrictions, the council should allow BZA to confirm this as a light industrial and proceed accordingly. Rezoning with restrictions is redundant and does not serve the best interests of the business or of the community. Fort Mill welcomes Onibeni, but let's keep the property light industrial. The BZA process exists for a reason. Skipping it is a mistake. Let's ensure a fair and transparent process by directing Onibeni to the BZA for proper classification. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Lisa Thompson.
Thank you, council members. Good evening. My name is Lisa Thompson. I'm a land use consultant with Moore and Van Allen. Address is 100 North Tryon, Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Onibeni. We're seeking the rezoning, which is item number 2 under old business. We are asking for that to be heard this evening as we seek a use determination moving forward. So happy to answer any questions and look forward to your support.
Thank you, ma'am. Scott Kokenauer.
Hey, everybody, Scott Kokenauer, 122 West Oak Street in the beautiful Whiteville Park neighborhood downtown Fort Mill. So anyway, I was here to talk about consent agenda item number 13 tonight. That is the pennies overlay that is on the consent agenda, and I own property that I'm pretty sure is in pennies 4 and pennies 5 in this, and I was never notified of this item. I do have some drawings that I'm 115, they want to condemn 115 feet of my property. So half of 170 is only 85. So I assume the 170 is on both sides of the road, not the center of the road. So there's no map that's been presented to anybody. There is no communication that came out. So when you put an overlay on people's property, it affects how they can market their property. It affects how they can finance their property. It affects how you can use your property as collateral for other properties. The reason I know that, on that sewer line that was condemned from me, the bank wanted me to reappraise my property, pay the initiation fee, the mortgage initiation fee, $7,000 out of my pocket. So the banks will do that. If you got 3% money, 4% money out there, and they can get you for 8% money, when you throw an overlay on people, you have to notify your mortgage lenders that. So fortunately, my wife and myself paid the note off. So we don't have a note on there right now, but the bad part of that is parts of last year, we were making 40% on some of our investment money. So we lost that opportunity. So I really think this needs to be tabled, sent back to staff, and have all the stakeholders notified that what is going on with this overlay district. And thank you. I did the same thing with I'll get to that later on. All right, hey, see y'all. Thanks again, and happy birthday.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Pam Massey.
Hi, I'm Pam Massey, 5149 Sap Circle in Clover, and we're all here to support Todd Flowers for rezoning consideration for case 2459, and we just like for you to approve that for us, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Lena Vivant.
Hello, Lana Vivant, 148 Charterhouse Lane, Fort Mill. Good evening. I'm here to express my deep concern with Silfab, with establishing their manufacturing dangerously close to schools and residential areas. And I'm sure you heard from numerous community members about what's involved, about the hazardous chemicals, thousands of gallons of hazardous chemicals. I'm not going to go into those details. And I'm not against the solar manufacturing, but I believe that it belongs in appropriate zone, certainly not in the light industrial zone. And as we know that May of last year, BZA voted 5-0 against Silfab and confirming that solar manufacturing is not allowed in the light industrial zone. Yet it is my impression that York County and perhaps this council is still allowing this process to move forward with Silfab, to move forward with their operations, and that deeply concerns me. If your children or grandchildren had to go to Flint Hill schools, would you be confident that they're safe, knowing that there are thousands of gallons of chemicals, explosive chemicals, stored less than a mile from school grounds? I certainly am worried for the safety of my granddaughter. So I would like to ask this council to take into consideration concerns of citizens of this community, put their interests first, think about their safety, their health, and move Silfab. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That concludes our public forum session. We move to our consent agenda. I will say that item number 13, staff and management have requested that we pull that out and to defer that item while they investigate, do some additional research and bring back to council. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve. With the removal.
With the removal of 13.
of number 13.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We move now to our first public hearing item. Item number 1, council to hold a public hearing and consider a first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 155 zoning code, subchapter E, procedures to add an administrative adjustments procedure to allow minor deviations to quantitative development standards in order to avoid unnecessary hardships that could result from strict application of the zoning code, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters relating thereto. Mr. Bono.
Good evening, council members. So this is a text amendment to the zoning code. Staff met with the Planning and Zoning Committee back in August of last year to discuss lot area, accessory structures, some other items. And this is one of the text amendments that has come forward out of that discussion. So administrative adjustments is a procedure that would help with accessory structures and other minor situations dealing with numerical portions of the code when there's a quantitative measure, whether it's a maximum or a minimum. The committee had requested that we bring forward an ordinance for consideration. So the goal of the ordinance is to introduce a new administrative procedure where staff could approve small deviations in quantitative standards in the code, and these are what we would call the oh so close. You know, if you've got something that requires 60 feet and you've only got 58, things like that, without the need for a variance. So that's the overall concept, and the way it's drafted right now is to allow a 10% deviation. There are some exclusions written into that, so for some of the more sensitive quantitative standards in the code, like overlay district standards, special district standards for PD districts that were established with their own special standards, lot size, density, and use separation. Those are all the most sensitive numerical criteria in the code. And there would be an approval criteria that comes along with this, so to make sure that it's consistent with the character of the area, that we're not creating undue hardship or impacts to our adjacent neighbors when we're approving these things. And there could be conditions of approval attached to these to make sure that those things don't happen. So just a couple of examples to explain this. So here we've got a single lot, and it's got 195 feet of road frontage. By code in this district, in this theoretical example, you need 100 feet of lot width per lot. So if this person came in and it's a relatively deep lot, and if they had enough acreage to create a second lot, but they don't have enough frontage, so they would need to have 200 feet minimum in order to be able to subdivide that and create a second lot, so that each would have 100. So today, they could not do that type of subdivision. They would have to go forward to the BZA and prove that there's a unique hardship in order to secure a variance to do this type of subdivision today. Under the administrative adjustment procedures in the text amendment, staff could approve administratively, so without having to go to the board, a deviation of 10%. So we could approve a lot that had 90 feet in lot width instead of 100. Here's another example. Suppose you have an existing garage, doesn't have anything above it. An applicant wants to build a second-story addition on top of the garage and put an ADU in it. Right now, your ADU limit is 50% of the GFA of your principal dwelling that's on the lot. And so in this example, say your principal dwelling, your principal home on there is 1,400 square feet. You'd be limited to 700 square feet for your ADU. And say just based on your existing architecture of your single-family garage, it would make sense and be reasonable to have 750 square feet built above it. But for that 50% limitation, maybe you'd have to carve out a portion of it that wouldn't quite make architectural sense. So staff would be able to approve administratively up to 770 feet in that instance. So here's a comparison table about how other jurisdictions in our comparison classes deal with this. Most of them allow for some sort of administrative adjustment procedure, including York County today. We already do this for parking and for buffers. So the proposed amendment kind of puts us in line with what Richland County, Lancaster County, and Rock Hill do today, which is most quantitative standards by some amount. Richland is 10%, Rock Hill is a range between 10 and 25%, depending on what portion of the code you might be adjusting. So staff recommends approval. This does further the strategic plan, Grow Responsibly goal, to provide solutions to identified code issues, to simplify the code. This does have some additional flexibility for applicants that is not present in the code today, and it would save them time, cost, and the uncertainty of pursuing the same type of request before the Board of Zoning Appeals. And they also still retain the right to pursue a variance if they go beyond the 10% or staff is unable to approve an administrative adjustment. So there's nothing lost by applicants by the addition of this amendment. And as the table demonstrates, it's within the range of best practice for zoning and is not contrary to general health, safety, and welfare, as that 10% limit, the exclusions that I mentioned, and the approval criteria make sure that they don't get out of hand. And by a 7-0 vote, Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Any questions for staff? Mr. Roddy?
If someone had to apply for a variance, what's that cost?
Don't quote me, but I believe it's $350 for an application.
And from start to finish asking for that variance, how long does it take to go through that process?
Yeah, it depends on how complete their application is, but assuming they complete a complete package right away, it's a 2-month process.
Then come to council?
No.
Or just from start to finish?
Start to finish, it goes straight to the Board of Zoning Appeals. It does not come before council of variance.
Well, I'm sure you remember for several years now, I've been asking for staff to have this flexibility. It's good to see it's finally getting to the point that you're actually getting it in writing to give you that leeway. That oh-so-close element, I think, is going to save people time, it's going to save them money, keeps a lot of stuff from having to come and get bottled down. I think it's just common sense to planning, common sense to government, common sense to just doing business. So I like it, and I'm glad to see that we were able to get there. Unfortunately, I'm not still on the planning, zoning planning, but good to see things like this coming through the system and now finally getting some black and white to it.
Yeah, real quick. First of all, Jonathan, thanks for presenting this to us. And I do want to piggyback off of Mr. Robney's, Councilman Robney's comments. I appreciate that because this is, I think, the common sense solution we've been looking for. You know, we've had, because of what we went through with the recode, okay, there was an undue impact. I think that residents in York County were impacted in ways that we didn't expect. And I think that this here is an opportunity for us to get it right and bring back, I think, a common sense value to us looking at requests that come in. And exponentially, I think this will happen much faster as we go through the process. But let me ask you one question. If somebody does request this, what is the timeline for the approval process on this? I know that you did talk a little bit about it. I didn't see a timeline, though.
Yeah, so we'd have to flesh that part out, but I imagine it would be very similar to having a zoning compliance request. So you would submit that probably about a 2-week timeline. I don't think they're going to be all that complex, especially when we're talking about one standard
Right.
dealing strictly in numbers.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Is there a fee that you intend to charge for this request?
It would take staff time to do so. It's probably prudent practice to have a fee associated with that. I think the zoning compliance is typically $100 or $50, depending. So that would be a reasonable reflection of the time involved. Otherwise, it goes on the general fund.
Well, I mean, it's staff time. I mean, it's not, doesn't require any resources outside of staff time to make the request.
That's with
Okay.
everything that we do, yes.
All right. As I understand it, this applies to everything but lot size. So if somebody has 4.95 acres and the current law says you have to have 5 acres to put a house on it, this wouldn't apply to the person who has 4.95 acres?
No.
All right, I have a question for legal. Is that something that council can add, is for this to apply to lot size? And if you're not prepared to answer, if this needs to be a request brought back, I would like to know.
I would like to evaluate that, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff before we open public hearing? Thank you, Jonathan. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Once again, I would like to know before second reading the answer to the question of the lot size, if that's something that council can make an amendment to. And also, I would like to have more specifics about the cost. It seems like I would like for it to be as low as possible and as we can get on that. But if we could just have some feedback. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. We move now to item number 2 of our public hearings. Council to hold a public hearing and consider first reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 155 zoning code to eliminate accessory structure standards unique to the Lake Wiley overlay, to revise the maximum size of accessory structures, to prohibit accessory structures in specified locations, to clarify the definition of an accessory structure, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters relating thereto. Mr. Boyna.
Yes, this is another text amendment that comes out of that same conversation that started in the August 2024 Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. And here, with the accessory structures, there's 2 different sections in code that cover accessory structures. So staff had suggested looking at those and maybe consolidating them or taking the best components of all of those and increasing some of the allowances there. So the goal is to make it easier for folks to make slightly larger accessory structures, to make it easier in particular for lakefront properties to have accessory structures. There's some pretty burdensome regulations in the Lake Wiley overlay currently, and the other goal here is to make one countywide standard instead of having it in 2 different sections. So here are the 3 major components of the amendment. The first is at the top here, and that would be to eliminate the accessory structures section from the Lake Wiley overlay so that we have one standard countywide. So this is what the amendment for that countywide standard looks like. So there's some reorganization of some of the existing paragraphs there, but essentially going 1 through 3 there, and the maximum size of accessory structures. The maximum size is currently only in place if you have less than an acre of property, and the concept there is once your property starts getting smaller, the more buildings you add to it, the more messy, the more building bulk and mass gets added to it, and it's hard to look at in the neighborhood when everyone's got all these massive structures on tiny lots. So the proposal is to switch from GFA, or gross floor area, to building footprint. That's much easier for applicants to draw onto their plats and submit. It's much easier for staff to calculate than GFA of either. You go from 50% of that measure to 65%. And then adding in what had been in the Lake Wiley overlay, that they could have 65% or 600 feet, whichever is greater. So that's a little more permissive than the code reads today. Number 2 there, stating that residential accessory structures shall be clearly subordinate to the principal structure in all dimensional aspects. So your primary dwelling should be the largest structure on the site if you're a residential property. That's what that means. Number 3 there, stating that non-residential accessory structures, so anything else, they're limited to 125% of the height of the principal structure on the lot. That's the same as what states today, just separated out. So we've got residential and non-residential. And then C, a suggestion to retain that from the committee from the Lake Wiley overlay and apply it countywide. It's more of a common sense paragraph that you shouldn't have accessory structures. And this specifically prohibits them from being located in platted and recorded easements, rights-of-way, septic drain fields, things of that nature, unless it's expressly stated in those documents that they can be located there. And the last component of this is to slightly modify the definition of accessory structure. There was a conflicting sentence in there that stated that it's only considered accessory when it's on the same parcel as a principal structure. Well, there's another portion of the code that allows an accessory structure to be on a vacant lot, so we eliminated that contradictory statement in the definition. And then it clarifies that if you're going to have an accessory structure and you try to get around the code limitations on the maximum size by trying to connect it loosely via an open breezeway, that would still be considered accessory. So here's an example of how this would work. So here's an example in Paddler's Cove. So this is a 1/5 of an acre lot. The house is about 2,400 square feet in gross floor area. The footprint is about 2,000 square feet. And so say you wanted to build a prefab metal workshop that's about 1,250 square feet. A lot of people, when they go to get these accessory structures, they are prefabricated. They're picking them up from Home Depot or wherever their other source might be. And so they don't necessarily try to build to a number. They just purchase an object that's going to be able to fit onto their property. So under current code, that prefab metal structure wouldn't be allowed because in the Lake Wiley overlay, that exceeds 50% of the footprint, and the materials don't match. There's a provision in the Lake Wiley overlay that says if you're going to build an accessory structure, it needs to match in materials to your principal structure. We found that's burdensome for people to try to meet. Now, under the proposed amendment to the single countywide standard, this structure would be allowed. It's under that 65% footprint, and there's no need to match building materials. Here's another example of something in the Lake Wiley overlay today. So there's a couple different lines here. So the blue line is the riparian buffer, so this is a lakefront lot. The pink line is the front building line of the residence, and the setback line is the green line there. So if you wanted to build an accessory structure, say it met all the other measurement requirements, and you wanted to put it in the location depicted here in front of the residence, you couldn't do that today in the Lake Wiley overlay. That's because all of the accessory structures need to be behind the front building line. So in this instance, the only place you can put an accessory structure is in between the blue line and the pink line. So that's really tight, and a lot of people have found that difficult to do, and a lot of folks have gone to the BZA for variances to locate accessory structures in their front yard. So under the proposed amendment, you could put that structure in that location. So this table shows that there is a million different ways to regulate accessory structures. So both our current standard and the proposed amendment fall well within the range. You can control it by having accessory structures in rear yards. You can control it by total building footprint, the number of accessory structures, many, many different ways to do it. Staff recommends approval of this amendment. It does further that strategic plan goal. There's a simplified measurement involved, so that's easier for property owners that aren't going to spend a lot of time and money and energy trying to figure out GFA and draw that up on what they're submitting. And likewise for staff, it's much easier to analyze that, much quicker calculation. It eliminates those burdensome requirements in the Lake Wiley overlay. It gets us down to a single countywide standard, so that we're same standard applied whether you're in the Lake Wiley overlay area or elsewhere in the county. We are clarifying that distinction between attached and accessory in the definition, and that amendment is within the range of best planning practices, and by 7-0 vote, Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions for staff? That was a lot of talking.
Losing my voice already.
All right, no questions? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to comment a few things on here. I like where we're going with the standard and by reducing the requirements that are necessary, but I don't feel like we're reducing the restrictions enough. One example that was used was Paddler's Cove. You know, a lot of those smaller lot sizes that are that way are all in subdivisions with HOAs, which are going to regulate their sizes and the looks of what they have. And going back to when I grew up, we had a little small house, 1,100 square feet, but our shop was 1,100 square feet also on a half-acre lot. And, you know, it didn't look any different than any of the other neighboring houses. And, you know, I think about like retired people, you know, they had smaller houses. They're not living in large two-story houses, but they want to be able to work on their cars and their classic cars or new cars or whatever they want, or their boats, or, you know, build bird houses. And, you know, they need a shop big enough to do those things, and to be reduced or limited for really no good reason other than just kind of aesthetics. I would really like this to be reduced more to maybe it can be 100% of the principal dwelling. I would also ask for the residential portion to allow the structure to be at least as tall, if not maybe 125% of the height of the principal structure, in the event of, again, going back to retirees and they live in ranch houses, you know, one-story houses, but they have an RV they want to keep in their garage. The garage is now taller than their house, or they have a you know, boat to go fishing and they have it in the garage, and, you know, they have 14-foot doors to get in, and so again, the garage is just tall because what they're trying to keep in it is tall. And we shouldn't limit those people just because, you know, they're living in a single-story house and not a two-story house where they could get by with these things. So I would really like for this to be to reduce to a little bit more if we can.
I have a question. So, good point, Councilman. Would applicants still be able to come in and ask for a special exception to accommodate those RV or larger dwellings, facility, additionals?
If an applicant's requesting something that goes beyond the maximum allowed for the lots that are smaller than an acre, they would have to go for a variance with the Board of Zoning Appeals. So a little bit higher standard than a special exception, because there's a statutory requirement to make some legal findings about the unique hardship applicable to the
But what we're looking to do here is basically, I guess, give a little latitude or discretion to staff, but those options still are available to accommodate what Councilman Litton were referring to.
Well, there's no additional staff latitude in this amendment. It is lessening the standard, but there's no extra administrative element on top of that for this particular amendment. So someone could, through the administrative adjustments, so if both of these amendments are passed in tandem, someone could have a slightly smaller than otherwise allowed, even with the relaxed standards with the administrative adjustment process. So you can bake in an additional 10% on top of whatever the maximum is that you established through this amendment.
And this is only for the overlay?
It's for the entire county.
So there would be one countywide standard under this
I see.
amendment.
Eliminate burdens requirements unique to.
And I will say, one of the options that I did think about when I was thinking about what we could do with this was maybe limiting the total built-upon area of a lot. So maybe we could offset, if you've got a smaller house, you can get a bigger shop if we like limit to 50% of the lot size, or 25% of the lot size, or some number. I tried to work out a lot of them in my head, and some of them seemed a lot, you know, they worked well on quarter-acre lots, but didn't work as well on, it just seemed kind of clownish on like an acre lot when you say, well, you can build on 75% of the lot.
That's
So
a lot of
I don't know
building.
exactly how that would work out. It goes into what some of these have is no maximum. It just has to, kind of fit in there.
And there are a couple of the jurisdictions on the list that do it the way you suggested.
Charleston County
Maximum area.
was one.
Any other comments?
So what are we going to do?
I think Mr. Litton makes some good points. I'm not sure, it sounds like this item was already brought through the committee, and there's a lot of moving parts to this one. I do like the idea of standardizing it across the board, not having two separate rules. I do like the idea of limiting the restrictions. I guess I would like some feedback from staff. I'm willing to support first reading, but I would like some feedback from staff on why we chose this one versus maybe the buildable lot and disturbance of the land, at least just to have some understanding of that, as well as the scope of the variance. So if someone, what do they have to show? I know what the 4 criteria are, but I think it would be helpful for council to be educated again as to what the requirements are to reach the ability of a variance.
I was going to see if I can, Karen, can you send me out the minutes from the meeting that we had that we discussed this? Because I'd like to be refreshed on it, because I know this was back late last year. I want to hear some of the conversation we had when we came up with this.
Yeah, I think
it may be
having-
helpful for other council members to listen in on it as well.
Having a summary of that and following up on some of these questions. Now that we've got some new comments on that.
Great.
So we have a motion to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. I would say that those last 2 items I would expect to see back on the active agenda, even though they've been unanimously approved, given the questions that we have. Item number 1 of old business. Rezoning action, consider third reading, case number 24-59, tax map number 561-000022, to rezone from RMX 20 to LI 1.47 acre parcel in District 2. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve with deed restrictions as provided.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is that motion appropriate to include the deed restrictions that are currently within the packet?
That would be fine. Yes, ma'am.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Motion carries 5-2. And I apologize, I didn't allow for discussion, so if we want to go back into that, I'm
That'd be
happy to
great.
open it up for discussion.
That'd be great. So I own lake property, and it needs to be dredged, but I'm not willing to pay the price to dredge it, so I'm not opposed to dredging. I think we need dredging. I just can't agree to rezoning this property to light industrial.
Okay. I'm not opposed to dredging either. But I go back to the Planning Commission, what was stated, which is this rezoning is not consistent with the future land use designation of neighborhood residential. Outdoor storage and drying out dredged material of the proposed business is not compatible for this area. And there are reasons why why the Planning Commission made this statement, and particularly with the future land use that is talked about. We have consistently gone back and made sure that we were looking carefully at our land use, our future land use. So this is why I can't support the rezoning.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Mr. Roddy?
Of course, I've always erred on the side of caution and wanted to allow the community to have its voice, as well as property owners to have their say as to what they want to do with their property. And all I've heard was the communities come out and say, hey, we want this, we need this. I empathize with the community of wanting some relief, wanting to get their property dredged, wanting to protect their property values, wanting to be able to utilize their property for what it is on the lake. I don't see me saying no. It's like telling them you can't fix a leaking roof. I wouldn't want anybody to stay in a house that's got a roof leaking, and we can fix it. The community wants it. We don't always get it right. Sometimes we go with the planning commission, sometimes we go against staff, sometimes we go with staff, we go with planning commission. But for overwhelming support to come out and say, we want this in our community, who am I to say, no, you can't have it, you can't fix the problem? So I'll say this. Hopefully, this works out. Everybody who lives there now, everybody who lives there in the future can see a value to it. I don't want anybody up here on this council to say, I told you so, it wasn't going to work. I hope that's not the case, but I hope we're allowing some relief to come in to address a problem. If it wasn't a problem going on with lakefront property and needing to be dredged, I don't think this council would even consider it. But hearing from neighbors say, hey, we have a problem. We can't utilize what we paid for being on the lake. So that's why I'm going to support it, and hopefully the neighbors get the relief that they want, this business works and not becomes a problem in the area. I think Councilman Litton has went through and tried to add some protections by knocking out some things that can come there while we're changing the zoning on it. And like I said, I've been here, I think this is my 14th year. We don't always get it right, and I can assure you we don't always get it wrong either. But I'm willing to allow this to come in to provide relief for property owners and going forward. And if this was, I think I said at the last meeting, if someone was actually to put a liquor store there, I'll probably say, nope, can't do it. But this is to assist the neighbors in going forward. And I say again, with all sincerity, I hope it works out. And I hope the deed restrictions and provisions and conditions that have been added gives those neighbors who don't want to see it some level of protection going forward in the future. So I'm going to support it.
Yeah, I've got a quick comment. So again, you know, the overwhelming support, and everybody has come and spoke out against, spoke for this. And again, we can understand the need for your property value and to make sure that you have access by water if there's an emergency and your dogs, et cetera. So again, that's why I'm supporting it tonight. I know this is a very, you know, big change for that location. The question I have though is on the deed restrictions. You know, how the language in the deed restriction itself, is it designed that the county can step in under the requirements of the deeds? Was it strengthened to that point?
Would you mind repeating that question?
Yeah, so under the deed restrictions, so normally under deed restrictions, a baseline would start out with the requirements of the people that own the property to maintain the deed restrictions. Is there any language, and again, after reading back through this, I meant to ask the question, is there any language here that does strengthen the deed restriction to help protect these people in case the county has to get involved in the requirements?
The deed restrictions places limitations on the use of the property to tailor it, not too tightly, but to the requested operation to be consistent with the community requests of council. It also has a provision where the county would have standing to enforce the restrictions should the property owner not do so. So we have an opportunity to stand in the shoes of the owner.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, that's it. Thank you, folks.
Madam Chair, can I share one more item? Actually went over and looked at the particular site. Actually went over with Debbie to look at it one Sunday because I wanted to make sure I was making a good decision on this. And I've also talked to Duke Power, and I've called some of the companies that are licensed to dredge on Lake Wiley and Lake Norman. Over the last 5 years, there's actually been 5 or fewer permits pulled or approved for dredging. And those permits come from the landowner. So the landowner actually has to get the permit to dredge. The company doesn't get the permit to dredge, the landowner does. So there have been less than 5 pulled 5 consecutive years. So I thought, wow, that's kind of That's interesting. Wonder why that is. So then I called the companies that dredge, and I asked the question. I said, I'm just curious, why have you had people call to get their properties dredged? I've called years ago, and they said, yeah, oh yeah, we get phone calls, but when we give them a price, then they decide not to dredge. And I think that's why there's so fewer permits pulled, because the property owner has to pull the permit, not the company doing the dredging. They have other requirements, but not those requirements.
Just for purposes of clarification, the deed restriction is restricted to essentially this use, and basically all the other light industrial uses were removed with the exception of what is required to do this job in dock building, which is similar to that, and it's also conditioned upon the approval of and I believe the owner put that in there, the approval of the Duke Power. So, I mean, I think those things are the protections that are in the deed restrictions. I don't know of any other way you can accommodate what really is somewhat of a neighborhood use. I mean, it's a use that's needed on the lake, and it's not, so it's a difficult question, but I think there's no other, I think those protections certainly give some protection to all of the folks around that. So I will be supporting this, and I know that we voted already, but if anyone has changed their mind, since we didn't have discussion, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? All those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Motion carries 5-2. Move now to item number 2, rezoning action. Consider second reading, case number 24-66, tax map number 71600000066, to rezone from LI to ID, 16.77 acres in District 1. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I'm going to do a motion to defer to next meeting on this one. And then I would also request the staff to come back with a solution around moving this to light industrial under use determination. This is a critical ask here, and this location should never be, deemed as industrial, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move now to, we have no new business, committee and other reports. Economic Development Committee, Chairman Watts Huckabee.
Yes, we had our first economic development meeting of the year, and a couple things took place. We welcomed our new economic development director, Mitch Miller. Mitch was working as our interim director. He's now full-time.
I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you. I forgot to do this one. We have to formally apologize, Mr. Huckabee. We did pull number 13 out as staff requested. We just have to formally defer it as they requested, and I'm getting the over here. All right. Council to consider amending the York County Preserve Transportation Corridors document to eliminate the additional setback imposed on transportation corridors through the Transportation Corridor Preservation Zoning Overlay and apply the additional setback to new projects approved in Pennies 4. Do we have a motion to defer?
A motion to defer.
Second.
Motion and a second. This will be to the next meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. I apologize, Mr. Huckabee. We will now turn to the chairman of the ED committee for a report.
All right, so we had our first meeting of the year on Thursday, February 6th. We welcomed Mitch Miller as our full-time economic development director. He was working as our interim director, so we're really happy to have Mitch on board. We also introduced Mark Ferris. Mark is working with the economic development department as a consultant. And I'm just curious, any of you know how many years Mark Ferris was economic development director for York County? You cannot answer, and neither can Christie. So I guess it'd be you, since you were the only one around. You know how long he worked for you guys?
Probably about 22 years.
28 years. So it's good to work with Mark again. We're excited to have his expertise as it relates to economic development, especially considering York County is one of those counties a lot of companies would like to come open their business or expand their businesses in. A couple of other things that we had homework assignments. We're going to come back, and at our next meeting, March the 6th, which is on Thursday, we're going to be defining what we want the Economic Development Fund to fund. So what are we going to do with that money that is generated in that fund? So we're creating a priorities list, and then we're looking to reconstitute the ED board, and we're going to be talking about that at our next meeting on March the 6th.
Thank you, Mr.
That's pretty much
Huckabee.
it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, no, one last thing, I'm sorry. When Tom was chair this past year, in your packets, you have this. It's on the right side of your packet. This is the York County Small Business Digital Toolkit. This helps a small business that's looking to open for business in York County, expand their business, where they need support, direction. It's kind of laid out in this document. I think it's a wonderful document. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce and their interns there for helping us design and put this together. It is a work in progress, so if you do take the time to read through it, you'll probably see some things in there that might need to be edited or improved, but this is a big accomplishment for York County.
Is that online somewhere?
Yep, I think it's on the last page,
Okay.
second to last page.
Yeah, it's going to be, Andy, though, once we're going
It'll
through
go
some other tweaks, and then it will be online, yeah.
So as you
Thank-
read it, you have any suggestions, edits, let us know.
Thank you, sir. Planning and Zoning Committee, Chairwoman Debbie Cloninger.
Okay, so we met on Tuesday, February the 11th, and in attendance were myself and Councilman Tommy Adkins and Andy Litton. At this time, this really was just a discussion and a presentation on the rural zoning project. It was a very organized and I thought, very well given overview of the plans and what would be some changes in this zoning. So this was just the first time that we have seen their work, which has been they've been very hard at work and very dedicated. I like the way that it was presented by different folks in the planning department. Each one was given kind of a homework assignment to investigate what could be done, what could be changed on our rural zoning. So we have a rather extensive action schedule for this project, and our next meeting will be towards the end of March. During this time also, Jonathan asked that we fill out a survey of the 8 questions that he presented to us, and so I will be doing my survey. I'm sorry, Jonathan. But anyway, so if you haven't done your survey, please get it into to planning. So, and then we'll have an update on what came out of those questions and another report from them late March.
Thank you, Ms. Cloninger. We do have Finance and Operations as well.
Yes,
Chairman
so
Tomaldale.
tonight, this afternoon, we met, Councilman Rodney, Councilman Atkins were present at a meeting tonight. We did have several items that we address, and these are applicants that were approved for different committees. As I go through these, I'll just go through them here as I list them off. Bethel Fire District Board, we've got Joseph Costello, Walter Wicks, and Michael Robe, which were approved under the Board of Assessment Appeals. We have, and that was for District 2, John Zimitz. We've got Board of Disability and Special Needs, and that is for District 2. We got Whitney Koba. Again, Keeping York County Beautiful, District 2. We got Amy Hutchinson for first term. Lake Wiley Parks and Recreation District, we have Dennis Kelly, and we also have Michael Hurst, and again, these were vacant spots that were filled. In regards to York County Natural Gas, we have Joel Wood for a second term that was approved. We've got 2 more here. We've got Rock Hill York County Convention Visitor Bureau. We've got Brian Jones, who was approved for a first term, and Lastly, we got Catawba Regional Council of Governments. We got Stacy Moore, at-large was approved, and Dean Fail, at-large was approved. And lastly, we did approve allocations of funds for District 7 for the Humane Society of York County for the amount of $3,000. The minutes were approved from the 21st meeting also. And that is it.
Thank you,
folks.
Mr. Audette. We do have an executive session tonight. Are there any council member new non-agenda comments before we go into executive session?
I guess I'm up.
Mr. Roddy?
I got two things. I know we've been in conversation about our new animal control facility. I know some of us had some concern about that price tag coming in, so hopefully we can get the conversation back on the table as to how we can look to get that number down, or some options that can come to the table versus just going with the one that was presented to us. So hopefully we can have that conversation again in the very near future, because I know this is a pressing issue for our animal control director. But I would go on record saying I would love to have this issue come to the Public Works Committee if we choose to go the committee route, which I thought it should have gone the committee route in the beginning, but somehow it skipped the committee and went straight to the process that it did go. So hopefully we'll get it in committee, have a chance to massage some things and consider some options. The second thing I want to bring to council's attention as well as the public, I was contacted a little over a week ago from citizens here in York County on the issue of capping rental late fees. I had someone send me over the contract, and in this contract, it was no grace period. Rent had to be paid on the 1st. It was a cash-only payment, no checks, no money orders, straight cash, and the late fee was 25% of your rent. This was in a contract. The person also contacted the news contacted me and ran a story and compared what South Carolina allows versus what North Carolina allows. North Carolina is capped at a 5% of the total rent. So you can see the big difference. And in this day and time, we're having such a big issue with dealing with people finding themselves homeless. This is something that can lead a person to be homeless, because if you have a 25% late fee, your rent's $1,000. That's automatic $250 added on top of your regular rent. If you can't pay that, all of a sudden you find yourself being evicted. Now when someone does a background check and finds out, hey, you just got evicted, or you've been evicted once or twice, nobody wants to rent to you. So now what does that do? It puts you in a situation that could lead someone to being homeless, who has a job, who's willing to pay, but due to some outlandish fees or crazy contracts, could result in a bad situation. I find it hard to believe, or I was very disappointed that South Carolina doesn't speak to capping these type fees. You know, we have, for years we fought with payday lending. We fought with title loans to cap them, or trying to do something to protect consumers. And I think it's upon us, if York County can do something, if and what we can do. I've reached out to Michael Kendry, he's looking at some options. But this is something that is really taking advantage of people, clearly taking advantage. You know, even mortgage lenders give you a grace period to pay your mortgage. Credit card people give you a window to make a payment. You know, for someone to have an ironclad contract that it has to be paid on the 1st, has to be in cash, 25% late fee, that's unheard of. We should not have people living under those conditions and possibly every month, every other month, facing late fees. If the 1st falls on a Saturday, the landlord wants his money by 12 o'clock on Saturday. 1st falls on Sunday, he wants his money on Sunday in cash. That's no way to treat people. And if we can do anything to foster a better working relationship, I think we should look at it, because the only option is the person that have to take the landlord to court. It takes money. It takes someone who wants to go fill out paperwork, go through the legal process, only to find out if you take me to court, I'm your landlord, probably gonna find a way to get evicted. You're not gonna have a place to stay. But if we can put some things in place that don't allow these type contracts to be written in York County, I think we're doing someone a great deed or great service if we're protecting them. Because we have some vulnerable people out here. Some people choose to rent. Some people want to rent. They don't want the responsibility of being a homeowner. I think we should look at what we can do as a county, and as well as reach out to our delegation, to our state delegation, who have strong voices in Columbia, to take a look at this, because it's not right for people to live and be put under those types of terms that's causing or can possibly cause them to be homeless or get evicted. So just wanted to put that out there.
Any other comments?
One real quick. I did want to piggyback on Councilman Huckabee's comment around the toolkit. Just to let the public know, that's going to be going out in about 2 months. It's going to be going on different websites across the board. We'll be doing some type of media launch out there to let people know, but it's going to incorporate how to start a business, the forms to fill out, where to go for financing, market trends. I mean, you name it, there's a lot from within the site it's going to hold. And then if you have an existing business, it will show you different ways of expanding. So again, it's the first time we've ever had this in York County, but I think it's something that's exciting, and we want people to start businesses here and grow them. So there you go. Thank you.
Thank you all. I want to say thank you to staff, to my council members, to Carolyn Atkins, who baked me a really sweet strawberry birthday cake, and for the decorations back in the back. It's been a special day. I have so much to be thankful for. I have family who is healthy and who loves me and who has celebrated me today, and I've had friends who have wished me happy birthday. And 50 years, I'm glad to be here that long, looking forward to being here a lot longer to see my first grandbaby born in April. Very excited about that. So thank you all for making me feel special today. Do we have a motion for executive session?
Yes, we do. Receive legal advice litigation update, contractual matter, receive legal advice interchange and roadway agreements, personal matter, attorney, county attorney, and clerk of county annual review.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. We will go into executive session. We are out of executive session. No action was taken. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Happy birthday.